Good morning. It's a thrill to see so many eager, energetic Aggies and friends of Aggies here this morning. Welcome to the celebration of the inauguration of the Stephen R. Covey Leadership Center at Utah State University. I'm Douglas Anderson, Dean of the Huntsman School of Business, and we are especially pleased to welcome today those who will talk and share memories of our dear friend Stephen Covey. We're also grateful to have many members of Stephen's family with us today and close friends, including his dear wife Sandra. Sandra, welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Many of you have traveled quite a ways to be with us, and we are honored to have you with us. We are also especially grateful to have members of the Franklin Covey Corporation with us today. I don't know, I haven't seen Bob Whitman yet, but where are you, Bob? Raise your hand. Bob, so delighted to have you with us. Thanks so much for your support and being with us. I feel deeply fortunate to count myself as one of Stephen's millions of admirers and friends. I was a student of Stephen's, first through his books, then by teaching his principles myself, and then later through a deeply meaningful personal relationship. Nearly 30 years ago, it was my privilege to meet Stephen in person for the first time through an introduction by one of his closest friends and neighbors, Bob Daines, who's with us today. Bob, welcome. I'm grateful that my friendship with Stephen subsequently allowed me to become acquainted with Sandra and to count members of his family, including Stephen M.R. and Sean, among my friends. Welcome to you both. Glad to have you here. We've looked forward to this day, the establishment of the Stephen R. Covey Center of Leadership at Utah State University, for nearly 10 years. Stephen and I began talking about this in the fall of 2009. I'm so grateful to all of you who've worked so hard and so patiently to bring us to this day. I share greetings from President Noel Cockett, who would like to have been here with us today, but who is traveling out of state. I want to begin with the end in mind. Our purpose at the Huntsman School, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, it's Robin. She was Batman and Robin for Halloween, but her name really is Robin. Hey, what was I saying, Robin? Oh, yeah. Our purpose at the Huntsman School is to be a career accelerator for our students and an engine of growth for our community, the state, the nation, and the world. Our mission is to develop leaders of distinction in commerce and public affairs. I'd like to talk about our vision for just a few minutes before I turn the podium over to Dr. Jim Davis, who will be our master of ceremonies today and who will announce the agenda. As Stephen taught, and as I believe, an organization's purpose and mission is an expression of its most important aspiration or goal. Purpose and mission must guide our every decision, our every action. As I have just recounted, leadership is central to the mission of the Huntsman School. Developing leaders is our reason for being. We hope to make ethical, principle-centered leadership a core part of the Huntsman School brand and a core part of the brand of Utah State University. Some years ago, we started taking our students to New York City for a career exploration trip. They visited the principal financial firms on Wall Street in an effort to develop a vision of how they might one day contribute. I was not on that first trip, but I got a detailed report. I was thrilled to learn that our students were told by their hosts the following: "You are from Utah, so we know two things about you. You are honest and you work hard." That's not a bad brand. I believe this is evidence that leadership is a part of the Utah brand. It would be interesting to analyze why that is. I believe one contributing reason is the life and mission of Stephen R. Covey. Stephen was world famous for his contributions to understanding and putting into practice principle-centered leadership. John Huntsman once said, "I knew Stephen was famous, but especially when a child in India came up to my car and tried to sell me a bootleg copy of The 7 Habits." I think I remember hearing one time that there were something more than 15 million copies of the 7 Habits, bootleg copies of the 7 Habits circulating around China. That number may be much more than that, Bob. I'm not sure what it is now. Stephen was proud of his Utah roots, and he was always ready to humbly acknowledge his debt to those, especially his family, his friends, and his faith, who shaped his worldview and his understanding of leadership. It is appropriate that a Center for Leadership be established in Stephen Covey's name and in his honor at one of the three main universities in Utah, because Stephen's life was spent in the development of leaders and because he had a deep affiliation with each of us. Stephen graduated from the University of Utah. He spent much of his academic career at BYU, and he completed his academic service as the first John M. Huntsman Presidential Professor of Leadership at Utah State University. We're pleased to say and very honored that this center should be established here at Utah State. We know we have a great responsibility now to live up to that privilege. Today we are honored to have in our audience graduates of each of these three major universities in Utah. To our friends from BYU and the University of Utah, we say we love you, and we especially love to win when our teams play you on the football field and the basketball court. Unfortunately, we were never able to do that when Steve Young was quarterbacking at BYU. Steve is going to join us. I don't think he's arrived quite yet, but he will join us soon, and we will be delighted to hear from him. But as much as we enjoy the athletic competition with our two sister schools in Utah, on the core matters of mission and purpose, developing leaders of distinction in commerce and public affairs, we are joined at the hip. We want our sister institutions in Utah not only to succeed, but to excel and to thrive, just as we know you want us to do the same. I would like to recognize another special guest who is with us today and who we will be honored to hear speak. John Miller is one of Utah's great entrepreneurs. John, thanks for joining us today and for all that you've done to make this day a possibility. Under tragic circumstances, John became the head of a family business, the beef business in the south end of this valley, and grew it into one of America's leading corporations. He credits Stephen with much of his success and with providing him with his own personal MBA education. In establishing this center, we acknowledge Stephen R. Covey's profound role and contribution to fostering principle-centered leadership and our own desire to become better practitioners of the principles that he taught. We honor and are inspired by his legacy, but we want to do more. We want to build upon it. We want to influence the lives of all students who graduate from the Huntsman School, from Utah State University, and to extend this influence beyond this campus to our state, the nation, and the world. Finally, I am so proud and grateful to be able to announce that with this launch of the center, the Huntsman Foundation has provided $1.5 million for an endowed chair in Stephen's name. It will be known as the Stephen R. Covey Professor of Leadership at Utah State University. This is a great contribution to a great man. And with these funds and additional matching funds we hope yet to raise, we intend to attract one of the world's great teacher leaders to help us build this center. This supports a gift of intellectual property by the Franklin Covey organization valued at more than $3 million, which will be made available to our students and faculty without charge. Won't you join me in acknowledging these wonderful gifts? So welcome to this special convocation. I hope you will enjoy it as much as I know I will, as we listen again to the luminous words, ideas, and principles that Stephen taught, and as we celebrate the impact of his remarkable life. Now it's my privilege to introduce the executive director, the inaugural executive director of the Covey Leadership Center, the head of our Marketing Strategy, Leadership, and Entrepreneurship Department at the Huntsman School, Dr. Jim Davis.
It's an absolute pleasure to be with you this morning at this pivotal event in Utah State University's history. In our lives, we have moments that we have. I remember where I was when, and fill in the blank. I remember where I was when this happened, and you remember it. Many years ago, I was an undergraduate at BYU, and my hair was a completely different color at that point. But the class that everybody wanted to take at that time was from Dr. Covey. It was the buzz of campus. Everybody wanted to take it, and you were lucky if you got in that class. I so dearly wanted to be in that class, never could get into that class. It was always packed. I could never get into his class. But I left on a mission with his book, Spiritual Roots of Human Relations. Phenomenal book. I lived with that book. It changed my thinking in a lot of ways. I went on my mission, came back from my mission. Later on in life, ended up with a PhD in corporate strategy. I studied at the University of Iowa. And at that point, we talked about more of Stephen Covey's work, more of his writing, more of his influence on leaders around the world. I went on to the University of Notre Dame and taught his principles there, never having met Stephen Covey, but I felt like I knew him through his writings. And I would go around the world and I would teach executives those principles that he developed. And I would ask, how many of you have met Stephen R. Covey? And hands would go up. I remember when I met him, and they could tell the story of meeting and the impact of Stephen R. Covey on their lives. It's a Stephen R. Covey moment. Then later on, as I'd worked for Notre Dame over 20 years, I got a phone call from Utah State. They said, would you be interested in joining us? And the carrot they held in front of me, Stephen R. Covey is in your department, and you're going to be the department head. Sold. I'll leave Notre Dame. I'll lead some of the best football in the world, and I'll come here for that. I'll come here for that. To be able to work with Stephen R. Covey as a chaired professor in my department. What a blessing. What a blessing. He wasn't with us very long after I arrived at Utah State. But boy, today is a big day. Today, I get to be the executive director of a center bearing his name. What an honor. What an honor. As we launched this center and started talking about this center at Utah State, professors and students and people around the world would call me and say, you're starting another leadership center. What does that mean? Another leadership center. Does the world need another leadership center? And what makes yours so very different than all the rest? Well, I started to think about that, and I started to think, we need to position ourselves in the market. We need to be known for something, not just another leadership center. And as we at Utah State pondered that, we started going back into the things that Stephen R. Covey wrote. This is one of his quotes. Principle-centered leadership is focused on teaching students to take responsibility for their lives, to work with others more effectively, and to do the right thing even when no one is looking. Principle-centered leadership. There's a lot of leadership centers around the world at a lot of different universities. Ours is going to be different. Our foundation is going to be principle-centered leadership. In other words, leadership is as much about who you are as what you do. Other leadership centers talk about what you do. There's lots of models and lots of research and lots of principles about leadership out there. But very few people talk about who you are, the principle side of leadership. And that's what we're going to be about at Utah State. We're going to extend principle-centered, positive leadership. The world really needs it. Our mission then in the Stephen R. Covey Leadership Center is to accelerate the development of principle-centered leaders through a unique mix of coaching, curricular, and co-curricular activities. And you'll hear a little bit about these this morning. But that's our mission. That's what we're going to try to accomplish. Now, I can tell you right now, today would not happen without our executive board. Our executive board is chaired by Stephen M.R. Covey. The co-chair is Boyd Craig. My right arm here at this university is Brett Crane. He's the associate director of the center, and he is a leadership professor. And a lot of the student engagement we've had to this point is because of Brett Crane. He's phenomenal. And I sit on that committee as well. We sat as a committee and thought, my goodness, we have such a great mission here, and we can't do it alone. We need to have a board that has credibility, that reflects this principle-centered leadership, that gives us traction immediately. I want to share with you the initial members of our advisory board. That's them. We've got Frances Hasselbein, the president and CEO of the Girl Scouts of America. And many call her the greatest woman leader in the world. Doug Conant, we're going to hear from him in a minute. Former CEO, chairman of the board for Campbell Soup. Muhammad Yunus, Nobel Prize winner. And he was all about microfinance, micro-lending. Ken Blanchard. Ken was going to speak to us today. Came down with an illness. Won't be able to make it today. But Ken Blanchard. And Rosabeth Moss Cantor. She's the Arbuckle Professor of Business Administration and a chair at Harvard University. John Pepper. He's the former CEO, chairman of the board for Procter & Gamble. Michael Mullen, the 17th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We've got, this is a great one, Lord Dr. Michael Hastings. He's a member of the House of Lords in London. You know how we got him? We had a leadership group that was led by Boyd Craig and Brett Crane, who went to London with a group of students talking about leadership. They connected with Lord Hastings. He enthusiastically wanted to be a part of us. He wanted to be here today. Now he's trying to plan a visit in the spring to speak. Indra Nooyi is the chairman of the board and CEO of PepsiCo. William H. McCraven. I got to tell you, in addition to being an admiral and 9th commander of U.S. Special Forces, he was the chancellor of the University of Texas university system. And Bill George, he's a former CEO, chairman of the board of Medtronic, and also a Harvard Business School fellow. The amazing thing is when we asked them to be a part of what we're trying to do here, it was emotional, it was enthusiastic, endorsement and willingness to be a part of what we do. They're going to all engage in different ways. They're very busy people. Some will come and speak, but they all would embrace the idea of being a part of who we are. This group is going to grow. We thought it was important that you meet at least one member of this group. And we've connected with Doug Conant, the best-selling author, CEO of Campbell Soup. And he sent a video recording, a message for you today. Let's take a few minutes and listen to what Doug had to say.
My name is Doug Conant, the founder of Conant Leadership, and a very proud card-carrying member of the Stephen R. Covey fan club. It's an honor to contribute in a small way to the inauguration of the Stephen R. Covey Leadership Center at Utah State. The year was 1990. I was 39 years old and about to embark on a new chapter in my corporate journey, when on the heels of Barbarians at the Gate, I was recruited into RJR Nabisco by KKR, right after it became the largest LBO in the history of the world. As I entered, I found myself knee-deep in a very toxic culture of low trust and even lower performance. I needed help. I needed my leadership rudder to be more fully developed in order to navigate the stormy seas of a most challenging situation. Then, in the form of a hardcover book purchased at the Newark, New Jersey airport, I met a man named Stephen Covey, and I began to read his new book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. At that moment, the student was ready, the teacher appeared, and he has been with me ever since. Within 2 years, I made the sojourn to Sundance to meet Stephen and his cadre of inspirational leaders. To this day, my engagement with that group has been the single most powerful experience of my leadership life. Armed with a leadership philosophy that was increasingly well anchored in people and performance. In my words, tough-minded on standards of performance and tender-hearted with people. I began to lift my contribution profile finding fresh ways to create both economic and social value. Ultimately, as president of Nabisco Foods, we went on to become the highest performing food company in our peer group. I then went on to lead Campbell Soup Company as president and CEO for over a decade, leading the company to a substantial turnaround and an unparalleled rise in employee engagement. Finally, I took on the challenge of being chairman of Avon Product at a historically difficult juncture, and together as a team, we made the best of a very difficult situation. Through it all, Stephen was with me in spirit, asking the important questions and constantly reminding that things that matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least. In the congregational faith, we have a profound belief in the living God, and we believe that God is still speaking. In my leadership life, I can assure you that Stephen is still speaking to me. And with the aid of this center, you are enabling him to keep speaking to new generations for years to come. I salute you.
And I've got to tell you, and I've got to tell you, the rest of the board feels exactly the same way. They enthusiastically want to be a part of what we are going to be doing here. This will be an extension of Stephen R. Covey's work. This will build principle-centered leaders for the future. And boy, do we need them. We need principle-centered leadership now more than ever before. And we are going to be the bastion for that. We're going to be the thought leaders for that. We will be producing research and leaders to promote that cause. Our program today is a full one. And you have programs in your hands. What I want to do is introduce the introducers of the speakers. I think it's important that you know who the faculty are in leadership at Utah State University. Since I've arrived here, we've hired 3 phenomenal professors that focus their teaching and research in areas of leadership. The first professor that's going to come up for an introduction will be Alex Romney. Alex joined us from University of Utah, and like I say, he's been here now a couple of years, teaches leadership. The second introducer, Jolena Bonner. Jolena comes to us from Oklahoma State. Again, phenomenal researcher. She's knocking it out of the park. One of the premier journals is Journal of Applied Psychology. And she's gotten 3 of those in the last few years. It's incredibly difficult to get in that journal. I call her Miss JP. I mean, she's incredible. But she will do an introduction. You'll get to know her just a little bit. The third I've introduced already, and that's Brett Crane, the Associate Director of the Center. And he was the first professor of leadership that we've hired here. He gets it. He knows student engagement, and he will speak to us a little bit later as well as do the introduction of Steve Young. And so with that, let's get the program started. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Alex, and he'll give the first introduction.
What a great day. It's an honor for me to be part of this day and to honor the Covey family. I was thinking a lot's been said so far about the breadth of Stephen Covey's leadership and his influence. But to me, the most powerful part is the depth of his influence. I know countless individuals, and I count myself as one of them, who remembers the first time I encountered Stephen and his teachings, and it profoundly impacted my life. When we think of the world of leadership, I really believe that there's no name that carries greater weight than the Covey name. And so it's a great honor to be part of the Covey Leadership Center. And I really think that this is an inflection point in our school's history. And so looking forward to being part of this. I'm going to be able to introduce first Stephen M. R. Covey and then Sean Covey, and then we'll invite them to come up and share some remarks with us. Stephen M. R. Covey is the New York Times and #1 Wall Street Journal best-selling author of The Speed of Trust, which has been translated into 22 languages and has sold over 2 million copies worldwide. He is co-author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Smart Trust. Stephen brings to his writings the perspective of a practitioner, as he's the former president and CEO of Covey Leadership Center, which became at the time the largest leadership development company in the world. A Harvard MBA, Stephen co-founded and currently leads Franklin Covey's Global Speed of Trust practice. He serves on numerous boards, including the Government Leadership Advisory Council, and he's been recognized with the Lifetime Achievement Award for Top Thought Leaders in Trust from the advocacy group Trust Across America, Trust Around the World. Stephen is a highly sought-after international speaker who has taught trust and leadership in over 52 countries to leaders and organizations spanning business, government, education, healthcare, military, and NGO sectors. He is married to Jerry Covey, and together they have 5 children and 3.5 grandchildren. Is it still 3.5? Still 3.5, okay. And now for Sean Covey, Stephen's brother. Sean Covey has worked at Franklin Covey in various roles over the past 24 years. Currently, he's the president of Franklin Covey Education, which works with thousands of schools, colleges, and universities in over 75 countries, helping them improve through a principle-centered leadership approach. Sean is a New York Times and #1 Wall Street Journal best-selling author and has authored or co-authored numerous books, including The 4 Disciplines of Execution, The Leader in Me, and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, by the way, which I bought for each of my kids, and I know it'll be a profound influence in their lives. And that book has sold over 8 million copies worldwide. Sean graduated with honors from BYU with a bachelor's degree in English and later earned his MBA from Harvard Business School. As the starting quarterback for BYU, he led his team to 2 bowl games and received numerous honors. Sean and his wife, Rebecca, who is also a BYU graduate, live in Alpine, Utah. Together with their children, they run a global nonprofit charity called Bridle Up Hope, whose mission is to inspire hope and confidence in young women through equestrian training. We'll first have the privilege to hear from Stephen M.R. Covey and then from Sean Covey.
Well, thank you, Alex, and what a pleasure it is to be here with you today. I feel honored to represent, along with Sean, our family, the Covey family, and I represent my brothers and sisters who are here and their spouses, as well as my precious mother, who's right here in the front. And I must tell you that the name Principle-Centered Leadership came about through my mom. It was her idea. And here we are around it with a center that is all about developing principle-centered leaders. So it's a tribute to my mother as well. If my father were here today, I know that he would want the focus to not be on him, but rather to be on the principles that we're teaching, the principle-centered leadership, and especially on the impact that it has on people and on their lives. Because for him, it was all about making a difference, mattering. It was about, in one word, contribution. In fact, I'll never forget when I was a young teenage boy. It was when I was about 14 years old. My father had just received his doctorate, and that was a big thing. I remember he'd walk around the house and he'd say, "Don't call me Dad anymore. Call me Dr. Dad." and so I remember sitting down with him and I said, "Dad, that's really great. What a great thing to get your doctorate. I'm proud of you." And he said, "Well, thanks, son, that's nice. And this is a nice thing, and it's an important thing to do this." He goes, "But let me tell you something." He said, "A doctorate is a good thing. It's an important thing because you develop yourself in achieving it. But it's an achievement, and that's important. But there's something even more important than achievement, and that's contribution. It's better than achievement, higher than achievement. And so I'm excited to have this doctorate. But what would be even more significant is for anyone that has received an honorary doctorate. Because honorary doctorates are given for contribution, not just for achievement. And again, nothing was wrong with achievement. But the bigger idea was contribution. That idea of contribution is what sticks with me today. My father would say, life is about contribution, not accumulation. Life isn't about the accumulation of things. Rather, it is about the contribution to other people's lives. And I saw this time and again in the work of my father, this principle of contribution come out in a variety of formats. And it began, if you think about it, with his study of Viktor Frankl and some of the insights that came there around proactivity. But the insight of Viktor Frankl really was that his idea of logotherapy, which is all about meaning. It was about meaning, about purpose, about contribution being the differentiator in what mattered to people and what made a difference. And you saw that in my father's work, from the idea of to live, to love, to learn, to leave a legacy. Leave a legacy is all about contribution. From the idea of going from survival to stability, to success, to significance. Significance, and a life of significance, is all about contribution, making a difference. I see this in my father's definition of leadership, which he so beautifully defined as leadership is communicating people's worth and potential so clearly that they're inspired to see it in themselves. They come to see it in themselves because of how we see it and communicate it to them so clearly. That's contribution. My father would often say, my passion is your potential. That's contribution. He saw his life's work as releasing human potential. That's contribution. And that was his contribution, to try to release human potential. And that's one of the main purposes of this center here at Utah State University, is to help students and others find and release their potential. He often would say, don't treat people according to their behavior. Treat them according to their potential. And that's what he was all about. And it's a contribution that continues to this day and will live on through this center, as well as the work that he's doing through his organization, the Franklin Covey Company. My father also taught this principle, that to make a new significant contribution requires a major new preparation. You couldn't just expect to contribute something new without paying the price, without the new preparation. And he modeled that in how he operated. And in fact, when he formed in the early days, it was first Stephen R. Covey and Associates, then became Covey Leadership Center, and then became Franklin Covey. When he left the university to form Stephen R. Covey and Associates at age 51, pretty bold move, the reason he did it was because he wanted to have a greater impact. He wanted to make a greater contribution to society. That was what it was all about. That's what motivated him. It's what inspired him. In fact, some people thought it was about, well, maybe he wants to make more money or, do more things like this. It was never about that for him. In fact, he wrote a letter to me and a few of my siblings in which he said at the time, covetousness has never had any place in my entire life. In fact, speaking very frankly, I don't even aspire to make money. I aspire to make contributions. And it is the only thing that motivates and sustains me. Life is about contribution, not accumulation. When I look at his contributions to society as manifest in a variety of formats ranging from literally tens of millions of books sold all around the world, not including the bootlegged copies as well. When I look at who we worked with and met with, over 30 heads of state teaching principle-centered leadership, literally thousands of leaders, including many senior leaders like Doug Conant and John Pepper and many others of major organizations. And I look at those contributions, and yet perhaps his greatest contribution is the work that he's doing with and through schools and with students. And my brother Sean will tell you more about this. I'll conclude by saying that my father had one last great contribution, and he made a new preparation to do it. And this is forthcoming. It's his last book that is coming out soon that my sister, Cynthia, is writing with my dad. They'd been working on it for years before he passed away. And Cynthia is finishing the project. And the book will be entitled, Live Life in Crescendo. And the idea behind this is that your greatest contribution is always in front of you. It's never in the past. It's always in front of you. You live life in crescendo. And you see your greatest contribution always in front of you. That's how my father did. And he's yet to make this last great contribution. And I think his greatest contribution will live on, not just through the work done with organizations and corporations and businesses, although that is invaluable. I think his greatest contribution will be in the form of the work done with individuals and students and leaders in this society in developing principle-centered leadership. Thank you so much. What an honor to be here with you today. Thank you.
I'm a little taller than my older brother, so I better put this up. Well, this is a great honor to be with you today at this historic event. And so I'm very pleased to share the stage today with Steve Young. Steve Young and I were quarterbacks together at BYU. I was a freshman when he was a senior, so I was his understudy. I just have to tell this quick experience, and you'll get to see Steve later. But we were playing UCLA at UCLA, and it was a big game. It was televised, and two good teams playing. And Steve got hurt in the second quarter, and he went down. We didn't know what he had, but he was taken off the field. And Robbie Bosco, the backup, was put in. I was third string. I was a freshman. I was 18. I'd never taken a snap with varsity. And suddenly I thought, boy, if Robbie goes down, I'm in. And in the first series, Robbie got hit really hard and fell down on the ground and wasn't getting up. And I have never prayed like I prayed then. And I said, Steve, rise from the dead. And miraculously, Steve all of a sudden got better. And he went out and he finished the game and won the game in the last minute. It was extraordinary. And I'm just really glad that he rose up. So there's so many great things we could say about my father, and we're so excited about this center. I remember before he passed away being with him on a few occasions in big audiences, and he would do a Q&A, and people would ask, what are you most proud of? And he'd always say, my family, and then he'd say, the work we're doing with children, with students, young students. So let me tell you briefly about how this began. So about 20 years ago, Muriel Summers, a principal of an elementary school called A.B. Combs Elementary in Raleigh, North Carolina, was desperate. She's leading this school 28 languages spoken in the school, high poverty, they're failing. Her superintendent comes to her and says, we're going to shut you down unless you change and get more students and attract more students. She was a magnet school, a school with a theme. She's desperate. She looks and finds out that Stephen Covey is coming in town. She had heard of him to speak. So she went to this big conference. She was late, so she had to sit on the front row. And she said, while he was speaking on the 7 habits during that day-long seminar, she kept thinking to herself, oh my goodness, begin with the end in mind. Be proactive. Don't be a victim of your past. Mutual benefit is a way to win people over, and so forth. As she listened to him speak on the 7 habits, she kept thinking, this is exactly what we need in our school. This is exactly what we need for our children, for our adults. So during a break, she got up her courage, and she went up and she said, Dr. Covey, my name is Muriel Summers, elementary school principal here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Can these principles be taught to young kids? And he said, well, how young? She said, well, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds? And he said, looked up and said, I don't know, why not? Why don't you give it a try and let me know how it goes? And so she took him literally, and she went back, and with her staff, they said, we're going to develop a school that teaches leadership to kids. How to lead your own life, how to be a leader among your friends, how to be a leader of audiovisual or of math or of science, and how to really find your passion and utilize your talents. And so she built this amazing school. She called it a leadership model based on the 7 habits. She started with teaching her staff the 7 habits, and then she taught all the kids. Even kindergartners were taught how to say, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And it was all about turning the school over to the kids. So she assigned leadership roles for the children. She basically taught all of her teachers, every child has genius. Every child can be a leader. Give them leadership roles and responsibilities. Turn the school over to the kids. And so they learned how to speak publicly, how to greet people, how to run things. If visitors came, she'd have a group of students, take them around the school. She had student leaders, student greeters, hundreds and hundreds of leadership roles. She taught them how to set and achieve goals. She gave them all a leadership data notebook where they kept track of their goals and how they were doing. And this went on for a couple of years, and the students started to excel. They could feel the belief in them, the affirmation, and they excelled, and they rose to the occasion. And this school, that was one of the worst performing schools in the area, became the #1 magnet school in the country. High poverty, 28 languages, and they just excelled. And the enrollment went from 300 to 800. Property values in the area doubled. Everybody wanted to come to the school. And A.B. Combs Elementary is now visited each year. Muriel Summers is still the principal. Is now visited each year by thousands of people from all around the world. And this model, which she began, is called The Leader in Me, which is now in over 4,000 schools around the world in over 50 countries. And it's extraordinary. And this is what Stephen was most proud of, was this work that he was doing with children, because as my brother said, his mission was all about contribution and affirmation. So as we look to the future and look at this center here that we're establishing, Stephen R. Covey Leadership Center, I see Utah State becoming the A.B. Combs of higher education. That's my challenge. So that we have universities and colleges from all around the world coming to visit this place to see the great work that you're producing, to see the leaders that you are producing, and to see how principle-centered leadership can be integrated into a curriculum to help produce students that are career-ready and life-ready and that can really contribute to the world. My father, he loved his family. As my brother said, my mother was the one that came up with the term principle-centered leadership. And Mom, can you just raise your hand so everyone can see you right there? Really high. There you go. But I looked to my father and I'm thinking, what can I do to, thank him and to carry on his legacy? And I always think of, just be a good father and a good husband. I remember one letter he wrote all of our family one time, and I kept it, and it's really profound, where he said, we all got married, we had spouses, and he said to us, forgive each other. He said, I saw growing up many families that would get little divisions, and over time they were far apart many years later. It's not worth it. He challenged all of us. He said, just forgive each other. You'll all make mistakes. Don't judge each other. Don't compare yourselves with each other. Don't compare jobs and careers, but just love each other and forgive each other, and don't let any divisions or partitions develop between you. It's not worth it. It was profound. And my best friends today are my brothers and sisters, and I'm really glad of that. I'm glad that my father taught us that powerful principle. So my brother Stephen just shared the quote that he was famous for about leadership. And I remember the first time I heard this, I was up at Sundance at one of his seminars. And I said, Dad, what is leadership to you? We're working on a leadership program right now at the company. Can you please describe your definition of leadership? And that's where he said, leadership is communicating to another person their worth and potential so clearly they are inspired to see it in themselves. And when he said that, I teared up because it was so genuine. I remember feeling, that's exactly how you make me feel, Dad, like I can do anything. And you are living the quote that you just shared with me. So it is a pleasure to be with you today. I'm excited to see what Utah State can do. As was mentioned, Franklin Covey gave Utah State an ongoing license to use all of Stephen Covey's IP and all of the rest of Franklin Covey's intellectual property to help build principle-centered leaders. So I wish you the best. Thank you so much for having us today, and good luck.
I am a little bit shorter, so. The mission, as you've heard, the mission of the Huntsman School of Business is to develop leaders of distinction in commerce and public affairs. And in line with this mission, Huntsman School students are required to participate in a leadership class. As part of this class, students plan and implement a project meant to better the world. We call this their Leadership Challenge Project. And over the years, hundreds of students have planned and implemented projects that have bettered the world both locally, nationally, and globally. And today is my honor to introduce you to 3 students who will share with us their Leadership Challenge experience. Those students are, first we'll hear from Olivia Burnett, who will be followed by Sterling Martin, and David Mann will close us up. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Olivia Burnett, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. This morning I'm going to tell you a little bit about, like she was saying, a wonderful leadership project that I was able to do just this last semester. So this is Charlene Rutland. Charlene is the mother of 6 children and 1 grandchild. And on June 27th of this past year, she was in the shower when she felt extremely dizzy and fell unconscious. After being rushed to the hospital, she was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma brain cancer. Upon discovery, they immediately removed the surgery, but due to the extremely aggressive nature of this cancer, it will grow back despite any treatment that she receives. Unfortunately, their family also does not have health insurance, and they had started a GoFundMe account where they'd raised about $12,000 of their $75,000 goal. Here is where I began to put Stephen Covey's principle, beginning with the end in mind, into action. I decided that I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I was going to try to raise as much money as I could for Charlene and her family. So what I did was I hosted a 5K family fun run, and we entitled it Charlene's Run, Come Join the Fight Against Brain Cancer. And the results were more than I could have ever imagined. We had over 500 people attend the event and raised $8,000 for Charlene and her family. But what was humbling about the entire experience was not necessarily how many people came to the event, but it was when I got outside of my comfort zone and I asked people to come help and support. I saw countless others completely disregard their own needs and become entirely other-focused, in some cases in the needs of a complete stranger. Empathy was increased for Charlene and her family. And there was a sense of community that was amazing. We saw local support from universities, high schools, teams, and neighborhoods. And when I put forth the effort, it was amazing the results that we achieved. Charlene, unfortunately, could not be there due to her condition, but I made a video and I sent it to her of the event, of people showing her that they loved her and they supported her, and just kind of a clip of how the whole thing went. So I have a short clip of that that I would like to show you today.
We love you, Charlene!
I am so happy to be here, so happy to be supporting you.
We're rooting for you, Charlene! We wish you the best, Charlene!
Charlene, so glad I ran for you today. You're gonna do awesome.
Charlene, we love you.
We're wishing you the best.
Thank you. Oh, excuse me. So as you can see, the synergy that was created there, everyone coming out, the results we achieved were not from myself. They were from everyone being there. Stephen Covey says, and I quote, "It's incredibly easy to get caught in an activity trap, in the busyness of life, to work harder and harder at climbing the ladder of success, only to realize that it's leaning up against the wrong wall," end quote. So many of us get caught up in the busyness of life. Maybe it's getting an A in a class or perhaps a job promotion at work, that we don't stop to ask ourselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I busying myself with? I challenge you, test your imagination. Come up with ideas and things that align with your values, things that you believe in. And then once you have discovered what those values are, busy yourself making those things a success. Busy yourself chasing after those dreams. Don't get caught up in the meaningless of the day-to-day. Because when you do that, when you chase after what you believe in and what is important to you, that is when we can bring people together. That is when we can change people's lives. And that is when we can make extraordinary results happen. Thank you.
This is me. So today I want to talk about the difference. Not the difference that I made personally, but the difference that we all make every single day. The inspiration behind this project that I put together, through my involvement here on campus with students and through my own personal struggle with self-value and self-worth, I realized that this is something that so many people face every single day, that they forget the impact that they make in this world. So the end that I had in mind was I wanted to help students and just people in general remember that they're making a difference, that they're changing someone's life regardless of title, popularity, how many followers they have on Instagram, or any other thing that might be on a name tag. They're making a difference. And I hope that this video speaks for itself. "84% of Aggies live away from home, away from our families and away from our friends, facing a new set of challenges every single day. Often when we think of leadership and influence, we mistakenly think of big stages and important titles and popularity, but that's wrong. We each have the ability to make an influence on someone around us every single day. If there's one important lesson to learn in college, it's that you have value, you matter, and you can make a change on this campus and in the world. If you don't believe me, watch this."
So the person that has personally inspired me to become a better person
is Colin Heaps, Brennan Cosson,
Whitney Joe from Idaho,
Joe Busby, Cooper Lowe,
Peyton Van Campen,
Cody Berry,
is Rachel Rasmussen, my roommate.
I met him as a freshman up on campus.
He's a buddy that I've known for a while.
He's my best friend, and he's been my roommate for almost the whole time I've been at college.
I've watched as she's taken care of me, my other roommate.
She walked in with so much confidence and eluded that confidence to the rest of us.
To me, Colin Heaps resembles someone who loves to have fun but also loves people.
She every day pumps me up, and when I'm feeling self-conscious or doubt about myself or going through a hard time, I know I can count on her to do that.
I knew that someone was watching out for me and someone was there for me no matter what I needed.
He has pushed me to be better in all of my classes and every organization that I've been involved with.
He has given me so much self-confidence, so much belief in myself that I can do things.
And everything that he does, he gives his all, and he tries his best.
I looked at Brennan, who was sitting next to me on the couch, and he gave me the eyes of, why not?
And this has helped me try to be that person for others.
That message and how much she believed it really inspired me to not only believe in myself and value that, but celebrate it outwardly. I want to be more caring and be able to pump people up in their trials and their tribulations and be inspiring to them.
And that's the reason why I got involved at Utah State, and that's the reason why I'm successful, is because I try to be like Joe Busby.
You don't have to let it affect your outlook on the entire world. So, thanks, Rachel.
That I can really make sure that I'm doing my absolute best, giving my 100%, to be the best person that I can be, and that's thanks to Cody.
Because of that relationship I have with him, I'm steps ahead of where I would be without him, and I want to thank you for that, Brennan. Thank you.
If you've never been told before, I'm telling you right now. You are a leader on this campus, to your friends, to your family. You make a difference.
Honestly, these are all incredible students, every single one of them. And the people that they're talking about that have made an impact in their lives are also students here at Utah State. Often students are thought about just confused and we have so much going on, but I want that to be a message that we make a difference. We really do. Each and every one of us, regardless of where we are in our life, like we're making an impact on someone. The reach of this video was, I released it through the Utah State University Student Association Facebook page. We had over 3,200 views and touched over 10,000 people. Had views in 9 different states. But nothing compares to the personal interaction that I had with people coming to me and saying, I was emotional watching your video. Sorry. It made a difference for me. And that's why I made it. Not to beat a dead horse, but leadership is communicating people's value and worth and potential so clearly that they come to see it themselves. That was one of the things that I had in mind in making this video. So thanks for bringing it up again. And I want to challenge each and every one of us, myself included, to make sure that we're telling the people around us that they're making a difference in our lives, that they're influencing us to become better, to grow. And I also want to challenge all of you to remember that you are making a difference in someone's life. Regardless of where you think you are right now, or what title you hold, or what stage you're speaking on, you're making a difference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to start today talking about a boy named Dennis. Dennis every morning wakes up at 5 a.m. to go to school. Occasionally for breakfast, Dennis will eat bread, but more often than not, he goes without. Like his peers, Dennis is encumbered with the necessities of life. Getting 2 meals a day can be a miracle for Dennis. With a situation like this and so much focus on just surviving, it begs the question, what type of future is in store for these kids? I wanted to introduce a paradigm shift to enable a perspective that views the world differently. I felt that Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People could be the catalyst in these children's lives to begin with the end in mind, be proactive, and work together with synergy. I began by raising some funds to provide basic school supplies and leadership workshops. I reached out to Franklin Covey, who put me in contact with their representative in Nairobi, Kenya. This enabled me to get leadership guides for the kids. I then went on to present my video, my project via video to various news organizations, and KSL agreed to film my project as a documentary that would be aired during the LDS October General Conference. I wanted to share just a little snippet of what they filmed.
I would like to be a doctor.
These kids are so eager to learn and so eager to create opportunities for themselves.
This spring, Utah State student David Mann traveled to Nairobi to spend a few days teaching the students. His lessons went beyond the basics.
What stuck out to you? We talked about being proactive, having a vision for yourself, and prioritizing. We are all winners, that's right. We had them say kind of this mantra, you are valued, you are needed, you are loved. And we have them repeat that, I am valued, I am needed, I am loved. And the energy you feel in that room is unlike anything I've ever felt. How are you? I hope that they realize, a lot of them have said that after the training, they believe that anything is possible. And so I hope that that is just reaffirmed and refortified throughout their lives. When I leave and go home, will you remember me? Will you remember the things I taught you? Yes? Sawa sawa? Yes.
But I would like many people to come here. I would like a lot of people, even if it means every month. Yeah, it can be nice, you know.
This was an incredible experience. One that allowed me to realize that opportunities, you don't have to be born into them. It's something you can create. When I asked the kids what kind of things they learned and what they appreciated, they said, we are all winners. We will never give up. Anything is possible. How grateful I am for a professor and the Huntsman Business School that stretched my understanding of a global vision and purpose-centered leadership. My hope for these kids is to continue to build upon the foundation we established through the 7 Habits. My hope for all of us is that we will continue to be the change we wish to see in the world. Stephen R. Covey said, treat a man as he is, and he will remain as he is. Treat a man as he can and should be, and he will become as he can and should be. Thank you.
So one thing I've learned working here for the past several years is we have amazing, amazing students. Can we just give a hand for all 3 of these students? So I'm here to represent the Cache Valley contingent and introduce our next guest. But before I start, I want to do a little shout out to Sean Covey. and the Leader in Me program. I'm a direct beneficiary of that program. I have 2 girls who go to Edith Bowen Lab School here on campus, and it's a Leader in Me school. And I remember the first time my then 3rd grader started spouting off the 7 habits. I got so excited I sent the video to both John and Boyd. It's had a huge impact on their lives, so thank you. I'm going to introduce a Cache Valley legend from way back. I just learned this, John, just an hour ago from our good friend, who shall remain nameless, that you were a legendary guitar player, known far and wide from Malad to Hiram. So you'll hear a lot about John's great successes in his professional career, but that's what I'm holding to. The guitar player known from Malad to Hiram. I remember sitting in lots and lots of meetings with John and Dean Anderson and Sean and Stephen and Boyd, and so it's just so amazing and great that this day is here. We've been working on this for a long time. John Miller grew up in Hiram, as they say out here, and had an amazing career in agribusiness. And he will tell you that so much of his success was due to the servant leadership model that he practiced and preached at all of the companies that he grew. He's been a partner in this endeavor from the start. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome John Miller.
Dave, if I had known you were going to bring up the guitar story, I would have brought my guitar.
Always next time.
Yeah, there's always a next time. You know, one of the great things about today is that we've had a paradigm shift. If you've noticed, all these Covey family members here have come from the South to join the North. And so we welcome you here, and we expect you to switch your allegiance as time goes on. And I want to say that these 3 young men that spoke, and the young lady, Olivia, Sterling, and David, this was like 3 great TED Talks. Does it get any better? I'm so proud of what you said and what you've accomplished. And I'm sure that, Olivia, if you stuck around here a little bit, you'd find some more contributions for that cause you're working on. I'm honored and humbled to be able to speak today. I want to thank Dean Anderson and others who have worked so hard to make this dream of the Covey Leadership Center become a reality. In preparation for this talk today, I reviewed my personal journals, who I have to give credit also to John Covey and his wife Jane, who taught me to keep personal journals when I was a missionary under his guidance. But I reviewed my personal journals. I looked at YouTube talks, Stephen's comments, and others, and I reflected upon his influence upon my life and millions of others. Thus, preparing for today, I've been again inspired, and it's reignited my desire to be a better person. I first met Stephen on July 27, 1978. I was a young general manager of 26 years of age. I asked Stephen to travel to our family business in Hiram and instruct the family and executives about leadership. Stephen introduced us to principle-based leadership. This included how to build trust, the concept of win-win, the communication skill of seeking first to understand and then be understood, never talking behind someone's back, and cultivating the 4 dimensions of the human personality, and experiencing a daily private victory, among other things. And I have to tell you a little bit about this daily private victory thing. So I got up this morning at 6:30. I sat in my favorite chair and I began to have this private victory about what would happen today and what this audience would look like. And I can tell you it works because you're a whole lot better looking now than when you were at 6:30 this morning. These principles resonated with our family and team, and the concepts became a binding language that kept us focused towards achieving our goals. A couple years later, I was asked to run the entire family group of businesses. It was a big decision, and I had some serious concerns about my ability to succeed with so many family members involved, declining market shares, as well as being undercapitalized. I asked Stephen for advice, and he strongly suggested that I obtain a management contract with my family. So I drove down to Provo, we met, and we sat down and we drafted the big ask. This is about 1979. $60,000 annual salary. We wrote it down. I can remember Stephen talking about this. 10% of the profits and a fixed price option to buy 13% of the business. I wasn't even sure what an option was. It was a big ask from my point of view. Stephen's response was, "Be bold." With trepidation, I presented it to my uncle. He looked it over and asked for a couple days to respond. It seemed like 2 years. And then a few days later, he called me into his office and said, "I can accept your proposal with one change. 10% of the profits after the first $1 million. Well, we hadn't made $1 million since I'd been there. But being young and believing that we would make millions a year, I smiled and I shook his hand. The contract was memorialized, and we went on to build a great business with great people using Covey's leadership principles. Stephen continued as a consultant to the family and business for a few years, and then as a mentor and friend and advisor throughout my professional career as CEO of Armour Food Company in Nebraska and National Beef Company in Kansas City. The 7 habits became the basic framework of my leadership style and that of our management teams. I'd like to diverge just for a moment and share a little bit about a man by the name of Don Miguel Ruiz. I've read a number of books that he wrote. Ruiz is a Toltec spiritual teacher, a medical doctor, and a successful author. To help illustrate the power of Stephen's words, I would like to share and paraphrase a few of Ruiz's teachings. Listen very carefully to this because I've had to read the book 2 or 3 times to try to relate to it closely. But regardless of what language you speak, your intent manifests through your word. What you dream, what you feel, and what you really are will all be manifested through your word. The word is a force. It's real. It is the power you have to express and communicate, to think, and thereby create the events in your life and influence the lives of many others. Your word is the most powerful tool you have as a human. And in a mystical way, it's like magic. But like a sword with 2 edges, your word can create the most beautiful dream, or your word can destroy everything around you, including yourself. One edge is the misuse of the word, which creates a living hell. I'm no good. I'll never be anything. I'm ugly, I'm stupid. The other edge is the impeccability of the word, which will only create beauty, love, and heaven on earth. Depending on how it is used, our words can set us free, or it can enslave us even more than we know and further distort our paradigm. All the magic you possess is based on your word. Your word is pure magic. The misuse of your word is black magic. The words we speak are so powerful that can change a life or destroy the lives of millions of people. Some years ago, a man in Germany, by the use of the word, manipulated a whole country of the most intelligent people. He led them into a world war with just the power of his word. He convinced others to commit the most atrocious acts of violence. He activated people's fear with the word, and like a big explosion, millions of lives were taken and global suffering occurred. Think of every human as a magician. We can either cast a spell on someone with our word, or we can release someone from a spell. We cast spells all the time with our opinions through words. That is the power of the word. During our domestication, our parents and siblings gave their opinions about us without even thinking. We believed those opinions and we lived in fear over those opinions, like not being good enough at swimming or sports or writing or speaking. Someone gives you an opinion and says, look, this girl is ugly. The girl listens, believes she is ugly, grows up with the idea that she is ugly. Doesn't matter that she's beautiful or how beautiful she is. She will believe she is ugly. That is the spell she is under. By hooking our attention, the word can enter our mind and change a person for better or worse. That is the power of the word. Stephen's impact on all of us and millions of others is the result of the impeccability of his word. Impeccability means without sin, or never using words that go against yourself or others. I don't mean that Stephen was perfect. He wasn't. But his words reflected a core belief, a set of time-tested principles, and he walked the talk. He knew who he was, and his word and life reflected the core principle understanding that human life is beautiful, purposeful, and by its very nature godlike. He also recognized that we see the world as we are, not as it really is. With humility and the adaptation of time-tested principles he believed and taught, we can see ourselves more correctly. He often referred to this as a more accurate paradigm. I remember when Stephen came to hire him and he used the word paradigm. I didn't even know what the word paradigm was. But I knew it very well after spending a little time with him. Unlike many who spread their black magic relentlessly and carelessly, Stephen sequenced his words into a cohesive framework that hooked the attention of others and enabled them to deeply identify with correct principles. His ability to communicate with the power of his word is why we are here today. That influence, or let's say white magic, continues to influence and touch the lives of those who hear or read his words now. I'd like to share a few examples I have witnessed just the past few years of the power of Stephen's word. Sean was so good that you brought up the story of the leader in me, and I'm glad that you talked a little bit about the history of the leader in me. As Sean mentioned, this program is promoted and developed basically by Stephen Covey today. And the program reaches, imagine this, K through 12 students, teaching them the 7 habits fully integrates into the curriculum, there are 4,000 schools. Do you know that that's nearly 2 million children a day that hear the words of Stephen Covey? 2 million. Think about the impact of this. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to visit a middle school in Brooklyn, New York, the Dewey Middle School. Dewey was in its second year of the 7 Habits Leader in Me curriculum. On this particular day, I, along with a small group, were met by students as we entered the school. It's an old school, must be 100 years old, surrounded by a high barbed wire fence. I was immediately impressed with the attitude and character of our student guides. There were no teachers or administrators with us, only student leaders. As we walked down the hallways, I noticed many signs and posters reflecting messages about the 7 habits, and numerous quotes from inspired leaders, including Stephen's. We soon entered a 5th grade class full of energetic students. The teacher asked us if we had any questions and motioned that the students would be happy to answer them. I stepped forward and asked any of the 30-some students in the class their favorite habit of the 7 habits. Immediately, all the hands went up. They're trying to get my attention. And I called on one young girl who shared her favorite habit, which was begin with the end in mind. Thinking, okay, she's got that one memorized. I dug a little deeper and asked her to share with us an example of how beginning with the end in mind was influence her life. Without hesitation, she responded, I intend to be a nurse when I'm 20. I'm preparing today by studying and getting good grades. I called on a young man whose hand was waving, and I asked, what is your favorite habit? He responded, first things first, with power and conviction. Please share with me an example of how you put the first things first. Well, when I get home from school each day, I get my homework done before I go outside and play or meet my friends. Wow, I thought, this is impressive. A few minutes later, walking down the hallway to a different class room, I asked one of our student guides if bullying was a problem in their school. Oh, she said, it used to be, but not anymore. What has changed, I asked. We seek first to understand and then be understood. And we work out win-win solutions so everybody wins. Later that afternoon, we met with a small group of teacher advisors. One lovely lady looked at me in the eyes and said, Mr. Miller, I have taught school here, I can still see this, for 29 years. And I can tell you I have seen more progress in this school in the past 2 years than I have seen in 27 years combined. It has been transformational. Another school a few weeks later, a principal told me she was delaying her retirement because she was experiencing more fulfillment and enjoyment from her job than ever before. She felt what was happening was so important, she needed to make sure it was well rooted before she retired. I have heard this same message in dozens of schools in the past few years. It's truly transformational, the power of Stephen's word. A number of years ago, my family and I were attending an unveiling of a statue honoring a leader in Salt Lake City. Stephen was also in attendance. As I introduced my son Alex, Stephen asked him what he was doing with his life. Alex responded that he was a student. Without any hesitation, Stephen replied, I'm a student also. I've often thought throughout the years how true these words are. I've had many lessons, and some I've had to repeat more than once or twice. I realize that we are all students of life, making our way along life's path. Thank goodness for this wonderful man whose words have inspired us to strive to be higher levels of understanding. We may not all be famous like Stephen Covey or Steve Young, but we can all be great by using the power of our words to influence and spread white magic among everyone we come into contact with. The essence of what I'm trying to say here today is that we all have the same power. And if we use that power with impeccability, following the example that Stephen showed us, we can change our own life and touch the lives of many people in a similar way. I would challenge each of us to be proactive, and for the rest of today and beyond, to take a moment before using your magic to answer the question, am I casting white or black magic with my words upon those I come into contact with? Let's be impeccable with our word. It's my belief and hope that this Center for Leadership will be a catalyst for hooking the attention of students and teachers and would-be leaders of men and women through Stephen's words and the words of other great leaders to influence and improve the lives of others. Be bold. Thank you.
What an incredible day. How do you introduce someone that needs no introduction? Steve Young is considered one of the most accurate quarterbacks in NFL history. He is a former professional American football player who played 15 seasons in the NFL. He's best known for his amazing work with the San Francisco 49ers, where they retired his number 8. He played college football for BYU, setting school and NCAA records en route for being runner-up for the 1983 Heisman Trophy. Last Sunday, KSL ran highlights of Steve Young's game 35 years ago, where he threw for over 5 touchdowns. As a BYU alum and a Utah inhabitant, I can say we miss you, Steve. That offense sounds a little bit more like Utah State's offense these days. Young was named the AP NFL Most Valuable Player in 1992 and 1994 and was the MVP of Super Bowl 29. Students take note, the day after he won the MVP and the Super Bowl, he was in class at law school. He is a member of the College Football Hall of Fame and Pro Football Hall of Fame. At the time of his retirement, he had the highest passing rating among NFL quarterbacks with at least 1,500 passing yards. His 43 career rushing touchdowns are second among quarterbacks, while his 4,239 rushing yards rank third all time. While he built his fame around his record-setting quarterback as quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, he's also a licensed attorney, an acclaimed motivational speaker, a sought-after corporate spokesperson, and supports numerous charities and foundations. And most importantly, he's a dedicated husband and a proud father. Join me in welcoming Steve Young.
Be here. This is exciting. John, thanks so much. And Sean and Steve and MR and Sandra, thank you for having me up. I really am supposed to find my light. There you go. I want to know that I'm grounded here. You don't know this. My mom grew up in Brigham City. And I spent my summers in Brigham City and traveling up to Logan. And how many times my uncle worked at Sherwood Hills. That's where I learned to hit golf balls. And that's why I still am not very good. They got them for free, so. But going by Manaway Lake and up to Bear Lake with my dad, my grandpa, stopping at the Bluebird Cafe, I'm grounded. And when I went to BYU, my mom's side of the family never forgave me. To this day, I will say, well, it worked out great down there. Yeah, but if you would have been at Utah State, it would have been better. And that goes for... When I was All-American at BYU, they would say, well, you could have been All-American 2 years in a row. You know, and I would have played in the NFL for 15 years. Well, you would have played for 18 years. You know, I mean, it never ended. And so this is an ongoing and especially when the Aggies beat us a few weeks ago, trust me, my phone lit up, from the Steed family, which is now burgeoning to, 500 people. So this is a painful truth. So to pay it forward, I decided that I was going to be proactive. In our firm, we found a young man that grew up in Logan, went to Utah State, and we thought that was and named Steve Young. And we hired him. And he's in our firm right now. So there's a Steve Young from Utah State that I work with. So I think that's fair, right? I'm doing my part. I'm trying to do my part. So we're friends. I guess that's my point. Don't run me out of town too fast. The honor I have is really rooted in my experience with Steve Covey through the years. But in actuality, my experience that I want to relate with you today is that he changed my life. And he changed it in 60 minutes. But in many ways, that's what Stephen's done for everybody, right? A chapter in the book, some precept or concept or habit that you're going to try to work on. I mean, he changes lives in that interim time. So this story probably will resonate with you. When I started with the 49ers in 1987, for 4 years, it was Joe Montana versus me. And it was a battle. And it was a battle of epic proportions in San Francisco. In many ways, it was David and Goliath. But I was David, of course. Joe was Goliath. And I didn't have any rocks. So it wasn't very fun. Like, I had a sling, and I whooped around really fast, but nothing flew, But we were at it, I did my best, and I tried to make it as competitive as I possibly could. I hated being the backup. I always hated the thought of, I always told people, if I was going to watch, I'd rather go to law school. I'd rather do something else. I don't want to watch. No disparity against anyone else that wants to watch, but I don't want to. And I hated those 4 years. But I was competitive, and I nipped at his heels wherever I could. I challenged him however I possibly could. And it was constantly in the newspaper. It was constantly pitted as a battle. But we never fought. We never had a harsh word. We were not toxic personalities. And so despite all of the rigor, it wasn't personal between us. But it was like a Cold War. And he forced everyone to choose a side. And so I didn't have many friends. I mean, okay, you got to pick somebody. Okay, I'll pick you. Not the little guy. So those 4 years were fraught with all kinds of dilemmas and anxieties and challenges that I was working through. And in the interim of those 4 years, Joe Montana led the team to 2 Super Bowls and 2 MVPs. And so I had to watch. My most hated thing in the world, I was forced to watch. Finally, in 1991, Joe got hurt and was going to be out the entire season. So it was my year. It was my time. And I knew that there were going to be comparisons that had already happened. Everywhere I went, it was, was Joe or Steve? I knew those comparisons, and I knew that I inherited that part of my life. I knew that was going to be a part of my life, but I had no idea how insane it would get when I started to play regularly. Every game was dissected, because if Joe had played, it would have been different. And throughout 1991, the first 6 or 7 or 8 games, we were not great. We had just won the Super Bowl twice. We were supposed to be great. Because we weren't great, why aren't we great? Well, that's pretty easy. Steve's here, right? And it was every game, almost every series, every play. Every word was compared. It became a thing that was like, it became so maddening. I noticed over the weeks it started to wear on me. I started to not sleep well. I was struggling with anxiety. Week to week when we wouldn't play well, I would take this huge burden on myself. And I started to build resentment for the situation, how unfair it was, how wrong it was, how overinvested I was in the success of the team, and how underinvested everyone else was. Instead of, as they attacked me, I started to attack back. And I felt it, I lived it. It got so bad that in October of 1991, you can go look it up, San Francisco Chronicle. It's probably on microfiche at this point, I don't know, we'll have to see. But above the fold in the San Francisco Chronicle, right under the headline of the banner, was a headline. And the Gulf War had just broken out in 1991, where we were at war in the Middle East. And the headline was, "The Gulf War, it's Steve Young's fault." Super funny, right? But for me, a guy that had built up now weeks and now months of continual anxiety and almost depression, when you stop sleeping well and you're really struggling to eat, you're struggling at work, you're battling, you're fighting with everything you get, you give every ounce of yourself every week to no success, and everybody is knee-jerk, true response of why it's not going well is, Steve's not here. Joe's not here. It's Steve's fault. And epitomized by this headline. So I give you that context because there was about early November, right around this time of year, I had gotten to a point where I needed to get away. I saw Christmas out in the future, and I didn't know how I was going to get there. How in the world am I going to live long enough to make it through this season? And so I decided I was going to run to Salt Lake City. My brother was at University of Utah Medical School, and he had a young family, married and a young family. I thought, I'll just run. I had a day off. I ran on a Delta flight, jumped in, got there on late Monday night, and spent the night with my brother. And we walked around town, around the U, and he's struggling through medical school, and he's trying to, and as we walked, I was telling him how horrific my life was, and how difficult it was, and how I'm not going to make it. And he's like, well, I'm not going to make it. I'm in med school. I can't pay for it. I don't know what to do. And so as we walked around, I was trying to find cathartic or some relief or something that would make me feel a little bit better. And he had trouble giving me anything that was really useful, other than a warm handshake and a hug, really. And that was really true for my whole family. And then I got on the plane the next evening to go back. And you can understand, going back was kind of the last thing I wanted to do. I honestly it makes me tear up just thinking about it right now, how hard it was to get back on that plane. Like, all I wanted to do was run. But I got back on the plane because I knew you can't run. There's nowhere to go. You got to go back. So I get on the plane, I sit down next to this bald guy. I say that because we've known each other for a long time, but I had never spent much time with Stephen. I'd been around him, I'd seen him at events, I'd known his kids, they were my friends, but I'd never really had a chance to spend time with him. And so as I sat down, I didn't notice him. And you could imagine, I'm in my own little space, and he nudges me, he says, "Hey, Steve, Stephen Covey." "Oh, hey, how are you?" He goes, "Great, how are you?" So for the first 30 minutes of the flight, just unload, right? Because he asked. And I was at a place in my life where you're going to hear, right? And I gave him every inch of it. How difficult it was, how painful it's been, how I just feel this huge burden that I can't even start to breathe in. I'm not sleeping. I'm pretty sure I'm depressed. I don't know what that really means, but I know that if it is something, I got it. So he listened and listened and listened, and that's one of the first things I noticed. He listened. And that's one of the great qualities of a human being. And he heard every ounce of it. And I finished kind of exhausting myself of everything that I could tell him. And he said, "Wow, that is a lot. And man, I feel what you're saying. I can feel it. First thing I want to tell you, which is remarkable, the first thing I want to tell you is that how you describe how difficult it is with so many guys on your team is because it's scientifically proven that any more than 7 in a group of human beings starts to devolve. And so you add an 8th person, the efficiency goes down. The 9th person, even more geometrically. 10th person, you get to 11, you've got way too many people. So you're right. It is too many people. But let me be the first to tell you, the magic in life is when you've taken, by definition, scientifically, too many people and figured out a way to win, to be successful, to be abundant. That is the magic. Don't miss that opportunity with too many people, because therein lies the magic. I've thought about that 1,000 times since then, because life is by definition too many people. And how can we find that magic with, by definition, inefficient systems? And so I didn't really want to hear that at the time. I was like, oh, okay. That's resonated with me more and more since then. But that wasn't the first thing that I remember about that conversation. But I remember it for the longest time, because it's really true. Then he said, Steve, can I ask you a couple of questions? I said, sure. He goes, I don't follow football, too much. I know a little bit. My kids play. But I don't follow the pro game very much. I know you're with the 49ers. But tell me about the owner of the team. I said, well, that's Eddie DeBartolo. I go, tell me about him. What kind of guy? Tell me about his management style, what he does. And I said, well, he's amazing. He's the first person that I remember. Just a little quickly context. In 1987, all the players in the NFL struck like picket line. I had a picket sign up in front of the 49ers. We were picketing for rights and free agency and different things. And he said, so for context, I had already known what the owners thought about the players. The owners thought of us as chattel. We were just cattle to trade back and forth. Eddie was the first owner that treated us like partners, like family. Asked us questions about how we were doing. How can I help? What do you need? He's an amazing guy. I couldn't think of a better person to be around from an owner and player perspective. In fact, he's the first person to actually fill the canyon in between the two sides. And I'm really grateful to him. And Stephen says, yeah, I've heard that about him. That really sounds like, I'd really like to meet him sometime. Sounds like an interesting guy to get to know. He said, let me ask you another question. Your coach, Bill Walsh, I know about him, but I don't, just what can you tell me? I said, oh my gosh, football is archaic. Football before Bill Walsh was, let's get him out in the heat and make him have no water to make them tougher and better shape. Let's not worry about how they're fed or how they're sleeping or their mental health. Let's not think about anything other than just with a big stick in a zero-sum game. You're going to do it my way or no way. And I just beat you with this big stick, and that's how we're going to coach football, and that's how we're going to play football, and that's how we're going to teach football. Before Bill Walsh, that's what it was. Today, it still is little remnants of it, but most of it's been influenced by what Bill did. And in the middle of me being with him, I'd already known it. I wish we had more time. I'd tell you about him too. But in telling Stephen about Bill Walsh, that he's forward-thinking in everything that he does. Play calling, offense, how he treats us, how we travel, all the things that you worry about to make sure someone's healthy. He said, I'd heard that. That's what I wondered. I'd heard that, and that makes me feel like I really would like to meet him too sometime. I look forward to that. Now, one last question, Steve. Joe Montana, is he on the team? And I said, Stephen, that's the problem. Yes, he's on the team. He's hurt and not playing, but that's probably most of my problem. He said, but let me ask you, if you needed to go to him as a mentor, I know he's one of the great players of all time. If you needed to go to him as a mentor to ask him a question, advice, could you do it? Yeah, sure. I think he'd answer the question. I think he'd give me the advice. No question about that. I thought that might be the case. Steve, I don't know if you know what I do, but I travel the world looking for what I'll call platforms that corporations, business, families, organizations, anybody that has built a platform where the human beings that are associated with that platform are given the opportunity to iterate, to find out how good they can get. Because that's what every human being wants to do. They want to find out their full potential. And I look for those systems, platforms, and I seek them. I go travel around. I hear about them. I want to go meet them. I want to get what I can of them, because then I want to amplify those things that make them great, that allow other humans to see how good they can get. And that's what I do. And I got to be honest with you, hearing your story and you answering my questions, if I had to say the platform that you have with the 49ers, with the owner and the coach and the mentorship and the opportunity and the nature of their team, I got to be honest with you, Steve. I don't know that I have ever seen a better one. I was dumbfounded. I wanted someone to tell me how horrific it was and how right I was and how I'm victimized and that this isn't fair and because that's human nature. And here was somebody very honestly but really effectively coming back and communicating back that I might be the luckiest guy alive. That's what he's saying. I travel the world and I don't know that I've ever seen anything better. Opportunity to have a platform to iterate, to see how good you can get. And then, like Yoda, literally with a finger out, and I mean, literally make sure that he got me in his eyes, and with his finger out, he said, and asked one last question, do you want to see how good you can get? Because not everybody does. It's a risk. There's a risk. But do you, and I want you to think about it, do you want to see how good you can get? I processed it, thought about it for a second, and then there was this spot in me. This I don't know, that's how I got there. This part that's yes, absolutely that's what I want. I want that risk. That risk is not too much for me. That's what I want to do. That's absolutely what I want to do. And then he said, it was unbelievable. He's just then go do it. Just classic, right? My whole world just went upside down. And what's amazing about it is he tapped into a part of me that could see that he was telling the truth. It wasn't an inspirational story so you can go just change your emotion. It wasn't something to just get your motivated. No, it was truth telling. It was foundational to the situation that I was in, and he formed it in a way that lasted. I raced down to work the next day because Wednesday morning is if you're going in the NFL, if you're going to get fired, it happens Wednesday morning before they open up the playbooks for the next week for the game. That's when the coach calls you in and says, hey, you know what, Steve? Your depression and the way you've acted and your kind of the way you've been moping around here and, I know it's a lot to handle, but that's when they call you in and kind of tell you, we're going to go with somebody else. And I remember racing down that morning with this incredible fundamental change in how I looked at the world and how I looked at my experience in my own life. So excited and praying that I don't get fired. Knowing that I did a lot, self-inflicted, that they would have been probably right to fire me. Not because of how I played, but just how I acted. The victimization that I was living with and it was self-inflicted, so much of it. They didn't fire me that morning. And I survived that season. From that moment on, I repeated to myself 10,000 times, do you want to see how good you can get? And repeated back to myself 10,000 times, yes, I do. So no matter what happened, being at the grocery store in line trying to check out, and the person in front of me talking to the cash, the clerk, as they're getting rid of their groceries, I just overhear him. Well, what do you think of Steve Young? Well, he sucks. He's horrible. He's no joke. I mean, just constantly. But all of a sudden, hearing that in the line with my bread, it didn't matter. It didn't hit me that way anymore. Because I had this vision that I was about to find out how good I can be. It didn't matter anymore if I was Joe Montana. It just didn't. It changed. And I give you this last little fact only to let you know the incredible difference it had made in my life. That next season, 1992, I won the NFL MVP award. Now look, you have to do it with a lot of people, and that doesn't happen overnight. That's not alone. But from a depressed, anxiety-ridden pit that I had dug and lived in, I was given the perspective and the foundational elements of what is true. He didn't motivate me with some other example. He motivated me with what was true in my life, what was standing right in front of me. I remember we played the Dallas Cowboys that year. They were the new great team, and Troy Aikman was the quarterback. And at Candlestick Park, we warmed up with the offenses at the 50-yard line, and we'd go opposite ways to warm up. And so you'd see the other quarterbacks from the other team right there every week. And I saw Troy Aikman, and I instinctively ran up to him. I knew him a little bit. Troy, thanks for coming. I'm on this quest to find out how good I can get, and I can only find out against the best. And you guys are the best, so I'm so glad you're here. And Troy looked back at me. Oh, okay. Great. The story for me is one that I think embodies Stephen Covey, because he was rooted in a truth about human beings, about how humans relate and how we could be better. And he had a quest. I think he was on a quest too. How good can I be to provide tools for other humans to find out how good they can be? It's magic. It's incredible. In today's society, in today's political environment, we are so fraught with zero-sum game thinking, limited resources, and we're fighting. And that relationship is adversarial, divisive, and someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. And that's how we look at it. And so we're battling, and whatever I get, I get. And whatever you get, you get. And there is no healing. There is no abundance. None. It's not possible. It's a zero-sum game. It's how it's looked at foundationally. We need Stephen Covey. We need abundance in relationships. We need the ability, no matter how adversarial the relationship, that fact that it's a relationship needs to find the human values that allow for abundance, so that we can see each other, find the common ground, figure out how literally it's win-win. It's the only way, because if you win in a zero-sum game, you know what happens to the guy who loses? He spends the rest of his life coming back to revenge. Because I got beat and now I'm going to come get you. So nothing ever actually gets won. It's always contested. And it continues to be contested into the future. There is no winning. The only way to win is in a spirit of abundance. Because both sides say, you know what? That works. It's hard. It's difficult, but it works. And then I don't have to spend the rest of my life trying to battle back and beat you back. And that's what Stephen spent his life doing. He spent an hour with me and literally changed the trajectory of my life. If I would have stayed in that hole, there was no other way to get out of that hole for me. No other way. I would have sat in there, and I might have beaten my way out of it and tried to claw it and try to figure it out because that was my nature. But I would have not have had an abundance. I would have survived maybe, gotten to Christmas. But there's no way that we were going to feed a success story, one that could really find its momentum. It's truth. How good can you get? How many times have I said that to other human beings since then? How much do I beg my own kids to seek this quest to find out how good you can get? Being good matters. Fundamentally. So you can tell when they called me to speak, I'm like, I got to figure it out. I had 10 other things I had. Today was not an undone day. I mean, there was like, I was supposed to be 49 different places. And I was like, I got to figure it out. Because the impact is so dramatic. And if I could do anything today, is to give you a sense that every relationship that you have, whether it's intimate at home, with your kids, with your extended families, with your dear friends, or it's as extended as the person that you run into at the red light next to you in traffic. It's a relationship. And in that relationship, can you find the healing and the abundance in it? Can you spend the next weeks, days, hours, minutes, breaths, looking in the relationships that you have, the millions that happen every day, not millions, but thousands, and especially the most intimate ones that you own? Can I find abundance inside of that? Can I be the healing agent that allows for that other person on the other side of the relationship to see how good they can get? Can I free them up to go do that? That is the legacy of Stephen Covey. It's the legacy that he affected my life. So I pay it forward today with as much passion as I possibly can because of the effect it had on my life. That each one of you will be the healing agents to find that abundance in every relationship. And if we do that and we can spread that, you can change the world. Stephen truly believed. I knew it from just knowing him. He believed he could change the world. He knew it and spent his life doing it. So let's keep it going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Really appreciate you coming. Very much. So that's the Leadership Center that we're trying to build. As I look out at this audience, there's a mix of folks here. We've got USU students. I see Troy Oldham. He got a hold of me earlier in the week and said, can I bring 30 high school students? So he's got 30 high school students right in the middle of the audience here. And I see professionals, people from industry, people who share the passion of what we're building. I think it's important now that we at least talk about engagement. As Steve said, we're building a platform here. We can't do it alone. You've seen the faculty. There's 3 professors, 4 including me, and a few others in the Huntsman School engaged in leadership to build and capture the vision and succeed with the mission that we have. We need you. So what I've done is I've asked Brett Crane, the Associate Director of the Center, to talk very briefly about how students can get engaged. He'll be followed by Boyd Craig, who is a right-hand man for Stephen R. Covey, to talk about how the rest of us can get engaged with this platform, this center that we're building. So, Brett?
What an incredible day. Thank you for being here. If you are a student, you're probably wondering, how do I get involved? Before I answer that question, I want to just take a minute to pay a brief tribute to Stephen and his influence on me personally. So I married well, for those of you that know me, probably better than I deserve. And one thing that I didn't know when I met my wife was that they were next door neighbors. Her parents, Bob and Janet Daines, to Steve and Sandra Covey. So I had an opportunity to associate with them a little bit. And I was so impressed with how generous and kind he was every time we interacted. Stephen was so kind enough to help me win over my first boss in Atlanta, Georgia. He agreed to meet with him after one of his sessions. We quickly met in a side hall, and I was unprepared for the response that my manager would exhibit. He reached out and enveloped Stephen and just began to weep. What I didn't know at that time was my manager was battling some demons, and Stephen and his work were instrumental in that fight. Stephen also inspired me to teach leadership at the university level. I remember during my MBA program, I was so disenfranchised with my leadership class that I took the opportunity to provide some constructive feedback to my professor during my final essay. Why didn't you include more of Stephen's materials? Why didn't you teach us more principles about leadership? To which he replied, this is a funny place for you to criticize your professor. He also wrote my letter of recommendation that allowed me to study at the University of Virginia, where I've obtained a PhD in business administration with a focus on leadership. It goes without saying that I would not be here without Stephen, and it is an honor to be a part of his center. So let me talk to you a little bit about how you can get involved. Well, in anticipation for this day, we've been building, and there will be more to come, but let me give you just a flavor of what's available to you. It's based on a simple model that we begin with knowledge of principles of leadership. And then we put those principles into practice with the idea of becoming. This is what Stephen referred to as primary greatness. We teach principles of leadership through our leadership class. You can obtain a leadership minor. You can also obtain a leadership certificate this upcoming spring. In these classes, we teach that leaders share and that they achieve a shared purpose, that they lead with the highest standards of integrity, that they demonstrate empathy and compassion, and that they strive for continual learning and renewal. And then we take those knowledge principles and we translate them into action. You saw that idea of contribution and action from 3 stellar students. Over 4,000 hours every semester are dedicated to making an impact in our community and our world through the leadership class, as evidenced by the people you saw earlier. We also, if you're a Huntsman scholar, have the opportunity to work every semester with a different partner. We identify a need in the community and we serve that need. We've gone to the reservation and worked with students on the Navajo reservation. We created an opportunity fair where these individuals had tools and inspirational messages that helped them to dream bigger about what's possible for their education and for their contribution, perhaps in a business career. Since then, we raised funds and awareness for Operation Underground Railroad, an organization that fights human trafficking. This upcoming spring, we'll be working with Mayor Daines and helping to elevate businesses on Main Street. Another way that we translate knowledge into action is we give students an opportunity to see leadership on a global stage. And during one of our 7-week courses, we teach about the great leaders of the British Empire, Winston Churchill, William Wilberforce. And then we go across the pond and meet with leaders and work hand in hand to help solve some of the issues that they're facing. This is a picture of one of our members of our Global Advisory Board, Dr. Lord Michael Hastings, who's kind enough to meet with us at the headquarters of KPMG, where he's the head of global citizenship, and then in the afternoon at Parliament, where he is a member of the House of Lords. I think 2 notable things about that experience that Stephen would be impressed with that he inspired. First, we go to the Tower of London and we learned about Sir Thomas More, and a man of great integrity that was willing to give up his life for his values and his beliefs. I know that movie that depicts his plight, A Man for All Seasons, was one of Stephen's favorite movies. And then at the end of our experience, we go to St. Paul's Cathedral, and we read the epitaphs of great men and women that are buried there. And we think about purpose and mission and contribution. Some of the best examples of being leaders that we have are members of our newest leadership club called the Covey Leadership Fellows. These students are leading out in helping to design the leadership certificate, in orchestrating events to coach and develop their peers. And our first study will be the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People when we start next semester. If you have more questions about joining that club, there'll be members of that club outside these 2 halls at the conclusion of this event. Whereas other centers may focus on differing stakeholders, sometimes differing interests among stakeholders, we are focused on student development. We want you to succeed. Our passion is your potential. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, everyone. I met Stephen Covey in 1986, 32 years ago this month. 3 years later, much to my surprise, I ended up in a conversation with Stephen about his work. That conversation went on for several weeks, and the outcome of that conversation was a question or a statement by Stephen to me. He said, "We need to work together, don't we?" Never did I imagine such an opportunity. But in August of 1989, I went to work with Stephen and became his partner in the mission of his life. And it wasn't many hours and days into that experience that I started to really get a sense for who this man was. It was very clear that his life was about a mission. In fact, he said to me early on, "Boyd, always remember, life is a mission, not a career." I also noticed something that Stephen M.R. mentioned earlier, that whenever people would come up to him in speeches or whenever he'd be interviewed by the media and people would focus their light on him and his work, he was the first person to point away from himself and to the power of principles. Timeless, universal, self-evident principles are connected to all the most important results we seek in our life. So I became part of this work, and he told me a story very early on about a man that became an influence in his life, that was a well-known speaker around this country and around the world. He said, "Boyd, this man was the best of the best. I was inspired by him. But I observed something very interesting, because when he died, his work and influence mainly went away with his own teaching." He said, "Boyd, the key to influence in life is that you must institutionalize that influence." And I learned from him that the power of his life was that he was a model of what he taught. He said, he taught often this wonderful quote, that you can't do right in one compartment of life while doing wrong in another. Life is one indivisible whole. And I saw him vest himself, his future, his influence, this sense of mission of unlocking human potential by institutionalizing it in several major ways in his life. The first and foremost was into his family. Now, for a moment, may I invite anyone here in this room that is a member of Stephen's family or extended family to please stand up. Now I tell you, there is nothing that Stephen gave himself to more in his life than his family. It was his first sense of stewardship and sense of opportunity of his life. He would organize his professional life and every dimension of his life around his family, around his daughter's performances, around his son's ball games. He would accept speaking engagements or not, based on the schedule of things that he had organized for his family out 1 and 2 and 3 years. He put first things first. And that was the center and power of his life. In fact, above all, I could see the core of that power in his relationship with Sandra. She was inseparable from all the influence of his life. She was his grounding force, and also sense of intellectual, emotional, and spiritual insight and power. There were many times when we were out on the road and Sandra would be there, and she would catch him during the break and say, "Stephen, you're way too complicated, way too complex. You're losing people. Tell people stories." Sure enough, he'd start telling stories. He'd pull everyone back around. No one knew about this side conversation. But she was his co-equal partner in every dimension of his work, his family. And this is an illustration of this principle that there's no compartments of life. The second area that he institutionalized his work was in his business, first Covey Leadership Center and then Franklin Covey. And he consciously made a decision that in his writings, in his work, in the training that was developed, he vested his professional mission in his life into a business so that it might not only be leveraged to thousands of people who are doing this work around the world, but that would be something that would last beyond his life. This is a manifestation of that. The third area is the emerging of this center in this school. He met some professors at Utah State out at a conference of the Shingo Institute over 10 years ago. He came back from that experience and said to me, "Boyd, there's something different about these people. There's something different about these professors. You've got to go give them a call, and we need to talk about this." Well, that conversation started off with 1 and 2 people. Bob Miller initially, then extended to the dean, then extended to many others, and now almost 10 years later, this is the result of it. And what I want to come back to is that what struck him is that these professors, this dean, they could see it. They saw the power of principles. They saw what could happen if you could ingrain these principles in a student's life, in the lives of faculty, into a community of something that would seed and influence the world through an institution dedicated to learning, research, world-class teaching, and seeding the best institutions in this world with students who would become to known and would distinguish themselves as the finest principle-centered leaders in the world. These three areas, his family, his business, and now this institution are the embodiment of what Stephen gave his life to, in addition to his faith. So the question for us is, how will we leave our legacy, each one of us individually? How will we institutionalize our influence beyond our lives? Well, first and foremost, Stephen would say, do it inside of the four walls of your home and the posterity that comes after that. Give everything. Put it first. Secondly, I would invite you to consider whether or not this center, the Stephen R. Covey Leadership Center here at the Huntsman School of Business in Utah State, is not a cause, an institution worthy of you institutionalizing your influence that will go far beyond your own life. How can you do that? Well, for you who are professionals, you are part of the stakeholders of this university, this school, and this center. I would suggest that there is a way that you can become involved as founders of the Stephen R. Covey Leadership Center. What does that look like? Well, within a few days, you will get an email. And in this email, you will learn how you can become yourself a founder. And in one great measure of your life, institutionalize your influence to generations of the finest principle-centered leadership that this world needs. It would involve an ongoing financial contribution to this center that will fund and fuel the influence of this mission. It will involve many other opportunities for you to come and teach and share and speak in classes, for you to become mentors to these students, for you to become judges of contests, of leadership contests, for you to get involved in these international leadership experiences. Come along, open doors to these students. There will be so many ways, and I invite you to seriously consider doing that and to do as Stephen taught. To make your life, along with many other things you're doing, more about a mission than a career alone. To take action, to join. If you felt inspiration in these students, in these faculty, in these impressive business leaders who have told their stories of how they have done what they've done through the power of principle-centered leadership, we invite you to come and join this family. We'll have an incredible experience doing it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you for everybody that's participated, but there's one final word. And it's appropriate that the final word comes from Stephen R. Covey himself.
What epitaph would you like to have on your tombstone? I mean, begin your whole life from now with the end in mind. Can I borrow your glasses for a second?
You'll love these. These will really change your paradigm.
These are more powerful? Whoa! I, Ron, have never lost an arm wrestle. And I don't intend to now. By moving the little things around, you might squeeze in one more of those big major things. It's almost. Wow, it's good. You know, if it doesn't fit, force it. My little son agreed in a family meeting to take care of the yard. It's your job, son. Guess who your boss is, son? Who? You boss yourself. You did nothing. Bite your tongue. Reaffirm your purpose. Raise boys, not grass. Several years ago, I remember thinking deeply about my own mission statement. I was sitting alone on a beach
I took out my mission statement and I really thought about it very, very deeply. It took several hours, but at the end, you can't imagine how I felt such a sense of clarity, such a sense of renewed commitment, and such a sense of exhilaration and freedom. Once again, I knew what my life was all about.
You could be very dedicated for many causes out there, worthy causes, projects, business activities, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, and not have a meaningful relationship with your own teenage son.
I saw my son Stephen training his son Stephen to prepare for a particular soccer game, and he was talking about the goals to be accomplished. I was so impressed by that. So I went to my son Joshua in his soccer game and basically said to him, "Son, let's talk about what some of the goals could be." The kindest thing that a husband or a wife can do for their children is to treat the spouse with tremendous respect and love and consideration. So the moment someone disagrees with you, what do you say to them? Good. You see it differently. That's why I so value my wife's input, because I'll say, well, how do you see it? And she'll see it totally differently. But honestly,
How many of you have ever had a loved one go through a terminal illness with a magnificent attitude? How many have experienced that? I just saw that with my sister, Marilyn, who just recently passed away. The night before she died, she told me, "My only desire is to teach my children and my grandchildren how to die with dignity and with a desire to contribute and to live life nobly." It's faster if we both know.
Yes, I see.
just think of your own life like you would a match. You know, the kind of potential. It's all bundled up in there. It's latent. I mean, this match could burn down the building that you're in if it's put in the right spot. Or if it were totally dark, it could give light to hundreds of people. That's the power, the potential in a single match. That is also the power and the potential in a single person.
As we close this program, one question: how good can we be? I think we can be world class together. Thank you for coming. Really appreciated everybody's attendance and your participation. Those that have been invited to lunch, we'll meet immediately after this meeting on the 4th floor in the Perry Pavilion in Huntsman Hall. Thank you all for coming.